Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out the radio version of the show every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on WDJY 99.1 in Atlanta. We also air on a podcasting network in Los Angeles called the 405 Media. There's a TV version of the show that airs on KMVT 15 in Silicon Valley at 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday nights. Both versions of the show air in other states. For these show times, plus past episodes, please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Ariella Lehrer. She's the CEO of Legacy Games and the president of Hit Point Studios. Ariella, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think, obviously, you've done a ton of really cool things in your career, and you are continually doing some really cool things. And I really want to kind of dive into that stuff later. But maybe before we kind of start into that stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
I grew up in central Pennsylvania in York County, next to the Amish.
Oh, interesting. How? But you weren't Amish, correct?
No, I am not Amish, but the Amish and Mennonite went to my school, some of them.
Oh, interesting. Okay, very cool. So you walk me through how you kind of got passionate about kind of the arts, and was there like a defining moment that you kind of wanted to go into kind of technology? I know you went to university and you took kind of a Bachelor of Arts Psychology, correct?
Correct. I had an undergraduate major in psychology and decided I wanted to go to graduate school.
Okay.
Studied cognitive psychology at the Claremont colleges in Southern California. And the problem was at that time, about 30 years ago, cognitive psychologists just went into academia, and that was not what I wanted to do. So I loved the study of perception and memory and attention and thinking, but I didn't love the idea of spending the rest of my life in a lab.
Okay.
So I wanted to figure out a way to apply that educational background, and that's sort of when I hit on educational software, which is where I started my career.
Okay, so were you interested in kind of software like growing up or psychology? Like, how did you kind of get into that and want to take that in school?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I honestly started out in clinical psychology because back then that was the best known field or branch of psychology, but there are hundreds of branches of psychology, which I didn't know about as a kid. It turns out that I don't really have the personality to be a clinical psychologist, and I discovered that early on. Partly it was I just wasn't sure of what I was saying to people. It felt like this awesome responsibility, and what if I, take them in the wrong direction? So I decided I'm much more interested and comfortable with the more sort of theoretical academic, fields. So that was after some trial and error. That's how I ended up in graduate school in cognitive psychology. Then for my PhD dissertation, I studied how children process information, how they remember and understand a story presented in different media. I mean, this was the era of Marshall McLuhan, right? The medium is the message.
Sure. So
we had a story that was a video story, a story that was a text story with pictures, and then an audio-only story, and looked at memory and comprehension for those three situations with those three variables. And I thought, I really want to add interactive here.
Okay,
but at that time, it was really at the beginning of Commodore 64, and it just wasn't out there enough. So I ended up not studying that medium, but realized that that was the medium I wanted to focus on. So then after graduate school, I went to Jerry Brown, who was, at that time, he had just finished his first 8 years as governor of California, and he started, because Jerry Brown, for as much as you want to say about him, he is a very far-sighted person.
Okay.
And he started 2 foundations in educational technology. Okay. And again, this is back almost 30 years ago.
Sure.
And so I joined him and studied policy issues related to introducing computers in schools. And just really, that was the launch of my career.
Wow, that's really cool. So walk me through kind of your journey up until you became CEO of Legacy Games.
Well, starting a new business.
Sure. Because Legacy Games is almost 20 years old, correct?
Right. And before that, I had 2 other companies.
Okay.
So when I first started out, this is just a truism. When something is so new, sort of like AR and VR are now, you can be an instant expert, even if you don't know very much, right?
Sure.
Because you know a little bit more than everybody else, so therefore you're the expert. Well, it was like that back then with educational software. Okay. Nobody knew anything. This was the days of Jan Davidson put Math Blaster in Ziploc bags.
I remember that game.
Radio Shack.
Yeah, I remember playing that growing up. That's interesting.
Yeah, so Reader Rabbit. So nobody knew anything, and it was really fun. It was just a fun area. So I started a consulting business, and I worked for Softcat. Some people may remember that company. They were the first. They only sold educational software.
Sure.
And they were a distributor based in Southern California, so they were one of my clients, and I consulted with them on what products they picked up. I consulted with the Learning Company. I worked on Math Rabbit, Robot Odyssey, some of those great early titles.
Yeah, I remember those. Interesting. That's cool. That's crazy because I remember playing those as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. So I was a consultant. I think I was a consultant for about 5 years.
Okay.
And had a great business. I mean, gosh, I consulted for Disney. I consulted for Commodore, and mostly it was software design, but it was also, distribution issues, marketing issues. So, I really, and then when I worked for the distributor, I really was at the nexus of this fledgling industry, because the distributor, has relationships with publishers and with dealers who are selling it. And so I got to know everybody in the whole, as they say, vertically integrated in the whole channel. And it was just a great a place to learn as much as you could. And after about 5 years, I made the mistake that almost all consultants make, which is, this looks easy, I can do this. And that's when I started my own software business, my first software company. So that was, however many years ago, I don't even remember.
Sure.
I partnered with a couple of other people, some programmers and a teacher, and our first product out the gate was a Children's Writing and Publishing Center.
Okay.
Which was, I think it was sold to every school in the country practically. It was really a print shop for kids.
Okay, interesting.
And the Learning Company was our publisher, and it was just a huge success, and that was quite heady. It's like a gambler who goes to Las Vegas and hits the $1 million jackpot the first time he plays the slots.
Sure.
That's what it was like, oh my God, now I have to do this the rest of my life. always looking for that hit, that big hit, that high.
Fair enough.
So then that was my first company called Legacy Software.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so that was that company, and we went on to make products for Disney. Because I was trained as a cognitive psychologist, I was always very interested in more open-ended types of kids games, ones where they could really be active learners and
Sure.
help construct the information that they were learning, just so therefore I always loved simulations. I always loved tools. And most of the products we've made for kids have been in that category that, you'd say it's a sort of a constructivist notion of how kids learn. So we made the Children's Writing and Publishing Center. Then for Disney, we made Mickey's Crossword Puzzle Maker. The thing that sort of killed that company, though, then again, I made a very critical and common mistake that entrepreneurs make. We had such success with these first couple products that I said, we can make our own characters. We can create our own IP. We can do X, Y, and Z, which we weren't any good at. So, having the aspiration to be the next Disney. And so we created these characters called the Mutanoids, which are just as weird as it sounds. And the math and language arts products the design, I think, was really very forward-thinking and also part of this, open-ended constructivist design philosophy, but the characters were just awful. And so after that, we decided we had to move on and do something else. So the next chapter of that company was we got a contract with IBM.
Okay.
And at that time, IBM was very interested in the consumer market. So this was, their computer was a big deal in the consumer market, and they wanted to be a big software publisher in the space. And so we created for them a game called Emergency Room,
okay, sure.
which was our concept. And this was really the first, sort of serious medical simulation out there. We worked with an ER doctor. We put together, I think there were 400 different cases.
Wow.
And it was a terrific product. It wasn't terribly gamey, but it was really intriguing because it was very interactive, very responsive. I mean, you could kill this patient or you could fix them. And
right.
you had to select the correct body part. You had to select the correct tool. You had to select the correct action of the tool on the body part. And then you would get a response. And the database was very detailed, in terms of the kinds of reactions that you might get from the patient. So that we created that product for IBM. Then they immediately exited the software business.
Okay.
And that sort of that's what happens when you play with the big boys.
Sure.
They can change their strategy fairly suddenly, and if that's your main business, then you're going to be out of luck. And
sure.
That caught us unawares, and that business basically shut down at that point.
Okay.
I started a new company called Legacy Interactive.
Okay.
At that point, and that was that the mid-90s, I guess. Yeah.
Sure.
I think so. And we then we got the rights back to our Emergency Room game. We put it in Walmart, and wouldn't you know it, it sold over 1 million copies, that game.
It's funny that you say that because I am like 100% sure that I've played that version. Because I was like, the IBM version, I was like, no, it's totally different. But I totally remember playing that, for sure.
That's funny. Well, do you remember if you had any technical problems? Because we had a lot of technical issues with that game.
I don't really remember. That would have been... Well, I'm 34, just so you have some context. So I would have been... Yeah, I just remember playing it, pretty pretty young, right? Like I would have been like, well, 12, 13 at the time. So my memory's a little, but I remember playing that for sure.
That's gratifying.
That's cool. That's really cool.
No, I mean literally that product. I've had people from around the world tell me that that motivated them to want to become doctors.
That's cool.
Or somebody wrote that, I knew how to save a life, because I played your game. And the thing is, we wrote it in DOS. Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
And then it was Windows, and trying to port it from DOS to move it from DOS to Windows was a huge endeavor, and it was very hard to do that. But eventually we got it right, and then we made a bunch of children's products from that that were pet simulations.
Yeah.
So Zoo Vet and Pet Pals, they were all sort of based on that same interactive, very open-ended simulation type of game genre, where you really could, the number of permutations and combinations of ways to play is just, basically infinite from the point of view of the user.
Sure.
So those games were great. They launched Legacy Interactive. And let's see, what else? Well, so here's another thing, another takeaway. We sort of sequeled it to death. When you have a good thing, it's always good to know when to move on.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah. So we must have made, I don't know, 5 to 10 of these versions of ER, and in fact, we even created one for emergency medical technicians.
Okay.
That I think Prentice or Mosby sold for us, and so we had a lot of versions of this style of game. And then, as what happens, the sales started to decline, and so we're looking around and thinking, well, what should we do next? Mm-hmm. And I was really impressed with the fact that there were a lot of women buying our ER game, our emergency room game.
Okay.
We didn't have great data on it, but I could tell from customer service, issues, or just customers who contacted us. And this was around the time that retailers like Walmart and Target just didn't believe that women played computer games. Sure. And in fact, it was even hard to convince them that people played games at home. I mean, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, especially nowadays, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you'd go to these retailers and they'd be like, oh, nobody played, I was like, no, really they will. And women will play these too if you get them the right kind of game. So this was all sort of swirling around in my head. And my husband David, was working for a nonprofit at the time.
Okay.
And nonprofit organization, and they were honoring Dick Wolf. So Dick Wolf, who is the creator of the Law and Order series, among many other TV accomplishments.
Sure.
And Dick Wolf, I ended up sitting next to him, which was just completely serendipitous. And we're talking, and he asked me what I did, and he's just a very curious guy. He started out as a marketer at an ad agency, and he just loves the latest thing, what's new,
Sure.
Tell me about the newest thing. So I'm telling him about what I do, and I said, Law and Order, these kinds of procedural TV shows, they make a great game. And he looks at me and goes, okay, let's do it. So I'm like, okay. Do you have a business card or something?
That's awesome.
So, yeah, really awesome. So we created the first TV drama game, and we ended up making 4 Law and Orders. The ka-ching, that goes in between the segments of the show, that ka-ching. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was like $10,000 all by itself. I was sort of, but we were able to make I think, a really good game. It was sort of a long form adventure game, the old style,
sure.
Adventure games.
Totally.
And again, it was hard to get it on the shelves initially, even though it had a brand. And I said, look, guys, women are going to buy this, especially Walmart is very concerned about, well, will women buy this? And I said, they love the show. They're 70% of the audience of the show. They love detective stories. Women love mysteries. They're going to buy this game. And it's a story-based game. It's not arcade. They're going to buy this game. So we had a bit of a hassle trying to get it on the shelves. We got it on the shelves. It did really well.
Sure.
Really well. So that was the start of the next sort of phase of legacy, which was creating branded TV, mostly TV content.
Okay, sure. That's cool.
And that, yeah. And at the same time, what was going on digitally is that there was companies like Big Fish Games were coming online.
Yeah.
And that was, of course, very female-oriented. The style of game that they excelled at distributing through their channel was hidden object, which, are visual puzzles. They are story-based, and they're not as usually, it doesn't require as much problem-solving as a standard adventure game, in my opinion. It's more of a visual experience, and therefore women can sit in front of the TV and do it while they're watching television or something, which is, I think, about the way half of them play these games. They're multitasking.
Sure. Yeah,
so
totally.
We started,
That's interesting.
So we started to make... Mm-hmm.
You were very early on in that.
Yes, we were very early on. CSI, that whole series. We actually made one of those games for Ubisoft.
Sure.
The CSI came after we started it with Law and Order and some of the other TV shows. And then we were also very quick to jump on this hidden object digital distribution train.
Sure.
And so we started going after licenses that lend themselves to that distribution method and game format. And so the next game we made, and this was very funny, when I first started talking to NBC about Law and Order, there was nobody at NBC who knew what to do about games.
Okay.
They had people there who could license other stuff like T-shirts, and coffee cups.
Sure.
But they didn't have anybody there for interactive. So I'm working with this guy, and he's like, okay, if Dick wants it, whatever. And we did get a very favorable deal with them. And then somebody came in, so this is, 15 years ago or more, was Bill Kisbert, who is currently one of the top people at NBC Universal in the games business. And I love Bill. He's just a wonderful man, one of the best guys in our business. And he and I were negotiating for another NBC property. And we were negotiating licensing rights.
Yeah.
So Bill says, okay, Ariella, I'll give you this one. I'll give you X if you agree to make a game based on Murder, She Wrote.
Okay, sure.
And I'm like, Murder, She Wrote? A game based on Murder, She Wrote? And it just wasn't something I had watched.
Okay.
And half the people I know watched it with their grandparents or something. I just had never watched it.
Sure.
And so I said, oh, Angela Lansbury, she's in that, right? Because, yeah. And then he starts to tell me what a vibrant, wonderful license it is. And, we can get Angela Lansbury, we can get her likeness. This is perfect for your customer base. And, I have learned over the years to listen to licensing experts like Bill.
Okay.
Because he knows what he has, and he knows the audience for it, and
Sure.
he knows how to make a successful licensed game. Everything has to line up, from who the target audience is to your distribution channel to the type of game it is. Everything lines up perfectly, and then you have a hit.
Interesting.
But if any one of those things isn't right, then it'll flop. And so we did 2 versions, both mobile and PC, of Murder, She Wrote. And it really ended up being one of my favorite games to play. I mean, really, it was it was great. We went from there to do things like Criminal Minds with CBS. We did Psych. We did Twilight Zone. We did Ghost Whisperer. Oh, that was popular.
Yeah, I can imagine. Sure.
That one worked really well with those customers. So, there were quite a few just in that TV genre. Oh, Clueless, Mean Girls we did. So all of these were, distributed through Big Fish and through the retail channel, and were, Hollywood branded, which is nice for us because we're based in Los Angeles.
Sure.
And that was sort of the second phase of Legacy Interactive.
Okay.
I would say we've been through 4 phases.
Okay.
So we've pivoted 4 times. So that's the second phase. Should I?
Yeah, keep going. This is great. This is great. I love this.
Okay. So what happened with Big Fish, again, the platform changed.
Sure.
Right? So between Emergency Room and Law and Order, the distribution method changed. Not distribution. It was, we needed a new game genre.
Okay.
And we needed to brand it. And between the TV shows and the next phase, which was mobile, the platform was shifting. We were going from PC downloadable to mobile.
Sure.
And that necessitated also changes in the type of game. Because we know that not every, game, we all know that games that you like to play on PC may not translate very well to mobile.
Yeah.
And we were finding that not only was Big Fish's business was coming sort of under attack because mobile was stealing away their customers. And when they tried to port, all of their hidden object games to even tablets, it's just not that much fun trying to look for objects on a smaller screen. It's miserable. And so we started seeing these sales fall off. So we then partnered with an outside developer in Hungary who had some really innovative match 3 designs, among other things. It was sort of match 3 with physics.
Okay.
And we embarked on making some games strictly for mobile that really worked well on that device, and launched ourselves in the App Store. And I think, like a lot of companies, you don't realize when you change up everything, it's not just you're changing strategies, but you got to change the company too.
Sure.
I didn't really have the right people on staff, and I just wasn't enamored with the, going from retail to free to play. There's
sure.
really that, the business model. It's not just the distribution channel. It's not, through the App Store. It's not just the change in platform from PC to mobile, but it's the way you make money. The business model is also different. And, we just didn't have the right team in place. And, of course, it's my, I take full responsibility, but we were never particularly successful in that transition to mobile.
Okay, interesting.
We tried some different things, but free-to-play is a very specific design aesthetic. That's what you got to know. And it requires you also have people who understand analytics, who understand monetization. You just need a whole different team.
Yeah, it's almost a different mindset, right?
It is a different mindset when you start thinking about design. So I'm sure we could have gotten there. But then I started sort of also pivoting to my first love, which were children's products. I had not made any children's products for quite a while.
Okay.
I think the last one was like Zoo Vet, and that's how I started in the business. So we talked to Crayola, and we made 4 different products for Crayola that were almost all of them were actually all of them except one was a creativity tool.
Okay.
And so I was sort of back to my roots. I love these little games. They're so cute. Crayola is such a wonderful brand to work with. They are absolutely beloved by families, and
Sure.
they're very, 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 very careful about their brand and what it stands for. And so we started pivoting in that direction, and that sort of got us into new technology.
Sure.
I was trying to figure out, what's the best route in. Usually they say with new tech, you don't need brands. With a new platform, you can introduce your own IP and create your own IP. It's a good opportunity for that. But I don't know. I have found increasingly our attention is so incredibly scattered that brands just cut through, even on a new platform, even in, a situation like an AR or VR product. And so I decided I wanted to go with Crayola.
Sure.
And try some new things. So we applied for a grant it was actually a contest with Google. They put it out there. They said, hey, we're funding some games for our new Tango AR platform.
Yeah.
And we'll fund the development partially and apply. And we applied with one of our Crayola games.
Okay.
And they funded. Google awarded us the contract.
Very cool. Congrats. That's huge. That's a huge deal, actually. That was big, like a few years ago. That was huge, actually.
Yeah.
So, that's a huge accomplishment. I think you're kind of underselling it a little bit.
Well,
I can say
know
that.
How many people applied, but
well, trust me. Usually, when Google runs a contest, they get more than they get a ton of applicants.
Yeah, I think they did.
Yes.
But Google was amazing to work with. It's really funny. And they were just starting their thinking about AR and VR too, 2 years ago. I mean, sure. I've seen such changes in that organization and focus, their laser focus on AR and VR. So we started working with Google. We learned a lot about what the technology is good for, what it's not good for, gameplay patterns that work, that don't work.
Sure.
It was a lot of, we started out that particular game. We pitched it to them as sort of a, coloring book in your room, turn your room into a coloring book.
Sure.
And we started designing that product, and it's like after about 3 or 4 months, we had a prototype, and like, ooh, this is not fun. And threw it away. Just said we're going to do something else. So we ended up with Crayola Color Blaster,
sure,
which there's an arcade portion that's just strictly arcade, and zombies are featured in it, but there are also fairies and fairies, unicorns, all kinds of creatures.
Yeah.
And so there's a story mode, and then there's an arcade mode to the game. And we have literally ported that one product to ARKit and ARCore from the original Tango version.
Very cool.
And we're in the process of 2 more ports.
Nice.
Other AR platforms. So that was a really good, first of all, learning opportunity. Great to work with Google and be first in line for all of their technology goodies, which they're very generous sharing with developers.
Yes.
And it's also then given us a foot in the door with these other companies who are developing alternative AR platforms. And through that, so that would be the AR, VR sort of, now we're in this world. Is that number 3? Is that the third transition?
Yeah, 3 or 4, sure.
I think so. And then I would say Hit Point is the fourth transition,
Sure.
which that's the portion of the world we're in now. It's very funny, as they say, how time becomes compressed. The world, as the world moves on, time becomes shorter and shorter. So I look at these periods. The first period was probably, we've been in business almost 20 years. So the first period's probably 8 years. The next period's probably 6 years. The next period was 2 years. So
yeah,
now
totally.
the transitions come faster and faster. So now I'm in, and Legacy is in the fourth transition. And this started last October.
Okay.
I joined Hit Point as president.
Okay.
The people who worked with me at Legacy are now all working for Hit Point.
Got you.
So the company moved wholesale to Hit Point. And Legacy still exists, but right now we're only selling software to Walmart.
Okay, interesting.
So, yeah, believe it or not, Walmart still does I wouldn't call it robust anymore. A year ago, it was still robust. It's no longer robust, but it's still a profitable business.
Sure.
Of selling CD-ROMs to their customers. And the CD-ROMs we sell to them, we probably have 10 on the shelves right now at Walmart.
Yeah.
And the CDs that we sell to them are disc compilations. These are to people who just don't want to download games. They like the physical product, and they love, mostly hidden object games, but we also sell Match 3 and, some resource management games. And so this is what Legacy does, and Legacy is going to continue to do that as long as it remains a profitable business for Walmart.
Got you.
So that's the Legacy side. So I have then moved my mostly business development and business strategy activities to Hit Point as of October, and working with Paul Hake, who's the CEO. Hit Point there are about 25 people in Western Massachusetts in Greenfield.
Very cool.
And and they're just. We had worked with Hit Point on 4 previous products before we merged our activities, and I just felt I had such a good feeling about Paul. And the reality is that I didn't want responsibility. I didn't want operational responsibility anymore.
Right. Sure.
I wanted somebody else to worry about, cash flow.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I don't blame you at all.
Right. Like any small business, and I was so very impressed with the way Paul managed his studio. And he's just amazing. And I feel like I've learned a lot from him just watching how he operates. So we are working together, and we are focused on 3 areas of business. Okay. The first area is the games business,
right?
Which is going very well. We just in December finished a wonderful Facebook instant game,
okay,
based on Star Wars.
Very cool.
And yeah, so that was really fun. And we're working with, what should I say, 2 other Hollywood studios on various games for them.
Very cool.
Yeah, and so and Paul's team, they do a lot of sort of game operations, back-end support for Electronic Arts. He's very sort of deeply embedded in the games business. Everything from the back-end server stuff all the way to, front-end and design. So that's one big, pillar of the business. The second part of the business, which I'm not as involved in, but is, just as you might have guessed, very lucrative, is the casino business.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes. So Paul mostly there is working on server and back end, the more technologically challenging pieces,
Right.
and things that relate to real money gaming for European companies. So that's another part of the business that really, I think, exploits HitPoint's experience in social platforms and server technologies. So that's the casino business.
Okay.
And then the third pillar is AR and industrial.
Interesting.
And that is the newest area, and that's probably the area where I'm putting most of my time right now.
Sure.
It is everything from working with Google and Walgreens to figure out how to help customers navigate to exactly the product that they want on the shelf using AR.
Right.
That's the type of product in that category.
Sure.
So we have a couple of projects that I can't actually describe too much.
That's
that
fair.
Are
Yeah.
in that category, but that's sort of what HitPoint's up to right now. So it does definitely feel like a new chapter for me. Again, it's, these are new customers. It's a different customer base.
Sure.
These are new challenges, new business challenges. But it's fun. Gosh, I love it so far.
But I think that, just kind of throughout your journey, you've given a lot of good advice, right? Like, you've had some ups and downs, some good times, some bad times, but you've kind of transitioned and kind of pivoted with the industry, right? And you kind of have to, right? And I think, the people that are scared of change or don't want change or try to fight change end up kind of dying off, right? Like, obviously, some of the stuff that you guys are doing at HitPoint now didn't even exist 3 years ago, right? And I think the next big, and tell me your thoughts on this. I think the next kind of big technology innovation is bringing technology back into the physical world, almost to what you just said, where, you walk into a Walgreens or some store and it takes you to the, specific Band-Aids that you need, or like some sort of like cough syrup or whatever you need, right? Like, it just, I think, or like Amazon just the other day launched their Go store, where you just you scan your phone and you grab whatever you want off the thing or off the shelf, and you just walk out and it automatically bills you. I think that's kind of the next big wave of technology. It sounds like you would agree with that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, I do agree with it. And that's why, for me personally, as fun as some VR experiences are and have been, we just have not chosen to put a lot of effort or energy.
Right.
We have a couple demos in that space, but, and I feel like the VR is not going anywhere, but at least for the foreseeable future, it feels to me that AR is where the most interesting things are going to happen. And I personally think, I can't wait to play the Harry Potter games.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
Niantic they are so smart about what they do in the consumer space with mobile devices. And they know that those mobile devices, faster than we think, are going to be replaced with wearable glasses. Things that look pretty darn normal, but now have this extra added capability. So they're learning as much as they can in preparation for the day when you're not going to have that awkward, hold your phone out in front of you. While you're playing the game and look like a dork. So, they're preparing for that day that's coming, and they're learning as much as they can about what's really fun about these interactions. But where I think the most immediate opportunity lies is with business, and really tying business strategy together with these, AR experiences. So, for example, when you think about the retail space. And, we've been all just amazed at Amazon opening the Amazon Go stores where there are no checkers, and you have all these cameras that are actually, they know what you take off the shelf, and then you walk out of the store and Amazon, just charges your Prime account for whatever you've picked up. So thinking about how normal retail can both compete with that and then offer more value and flexibility to the customer. Because the customer, they want to be able to walk up to the shelf, look for a product. If it's not there, they want to be able to look on their phone and say, okay, order it, and touch their phone and have it delivered, or maybe have it, or they'll do something, they'll order online beforehand, they'll go to the physical store, they'll pick up some things at the physical store, but then other things they've ordered are in their locker right outside of the store that they pick up. They just want it any which way,
sure,
and any way that's convenient and any way that works for them. So as we're rethinking these shopping experiences, and once we combine that with AI and knowing as much about a customer as Amazon knows about us or Google knows about us,
yeah.
I mean, imagine you're walking into Saks at Fifth Avenue and they identify who I am. They know what I bought last time. They know the designer I like. They can, show me. Now, of course, with Saks, this isn't a good example because Saks customer probably doesn't care about a promotion. But a normal person would care. Oh, you bought it last time it cost X, and now this time it costs 20% less. You combine that knowledge of the customer with an experience, a digital experience in a physical store, and so that when they go up to the physical shelves, we not only know where they are standing in the store, we not only know what they're looking at, but now we can show them, superimpose on top of that physical product, oh, here's some additional information. Here's a video about how you'd actually cook that quinoa. Because I always buy it and I never know what to do with it.
Sure. Yeah.
No, so anyway,
you're right.
The notion of merging our physical and virtual worlds, and then combining that with knowledge about who we are and our preferences. It's all a little creepy, I understand, in terms of privacy, and that's an issue.
Yeah.
But the reality is that we can make these shopping experiences so much more personalized, customized, relevant, and even fun.
Yeah.
There are ways to gamify this, which I think we're exploring also. So yes, that's my opinion on where it's all going.
No, I think that's really interesting, and I agree. Like even just being able to virtually try on clothes or get recommendations based on your body type or your height or kind of your style preferences when you go into a store, stuff like that, where you're basically saving people time. And because I think sometimes certain shopping experiences in certain types of stores, if you're not comfortable, say, the perfect example for me, is I had to get a suit a few weeks ago, and I know nothing about that stuff. I have no clue. It almost gives me anxiety even thinking about it. But so of course, I went to this store in town, and I got a girl to help me out and pick everything kind of out for me. And I was basically here's what I'm going to. I need a suit. You pick it out. I'll put it on, and then we'll get it tailored to me, right? And it was great. But if you could virtually do that kind of at any kind of shopping experience, somebody like myself would love that. Because if you're well, I need something more formal for this event or this thing, and somebody can help you, or technology can help you with that, riding the latest trends in a city you're potentially going to, could be really cool, right? Where I work at a tech startup, so my normal daily attire is usually a hoodie and jeans. So dressing up sometimes for certain events in other cities, you don't know what the style necessarily is or isn't, right? And so just kind of breaking that down could be very useful, or is one example of how technology could really help people out with that without making them uncomfortable, right? Because sometimes people don't want to ask for help when it makes them uncomfortable.
Well, one thing I've been actually pushing for in a project we're working on now is to provide, once we navigate people to a particular department, to provide different filters through which they can look at the items in that department. And so one thing that has always been interesting to me is something like a heat map, where you can actually see what items other people look at. Because I have taste in my toes when it comes to clothing, and so I don't trust my own. Like, oh yeah, I love that Hawaiian print over there. You know, I can't trust my own preferences. So I'd much rather see, well, what are other people looking at here in this department, and then I'll look at those too. Or you think about price. You know, I'd love a filter for price. Show me everything under $250, because I'm not even going to look at those other things. Or show me, you know, so that you could do a couple filters. You know, I need something that's red that's under, you know, $100 or something, and then it shows you. And there's a lot of back end work that's required. You know, we had experience in integrating with what's called a planogram at Walgreens. So you need to know the inventory. You know, you need to know where everything is, and you need to know everything about those clothes or those items on the grocery shelf. So there is a lot of back-end stuff that has to happen. You know, a lot of these stores don't even have Wi-Fi.
Right.
So it's you know, we're really at the very, very, very beginning of imagining how this is all going to evolve. But I just think there's some really interesting demos, and I just think people should be testing a lot of different ideas at this point to see what works, what resonates with the customer.
No, I 100% agree with you, but sadly, we're out of time. So let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys and any other links you want to mention.
Well, if anybody wants to connect on LinkedIn, Ariella Lehrer on LinkedIn, Paul Hake, H-A-K-E on LinkedIn. And then, of course, we have Hit Point Studios is the name of our website, and we have more information there about the kinds of projects that we've been working on at Hit Point. And I'm also always happy to speak at conferences. I've been doing quite a bit of that the last 2 years. So, just reach out with any questions. Always happy to talk, as you can tell.
No, that's great. I was just going to say, like, we could probably go on for another hour just talking about this stuff, but you know, I only get an hour, so.
Well, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. Also check us out on Facebook at Building the Future Show, and follow us on Twitter at Building Show. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com, and keep building the future.